Hi, seventh graders. Today we're learning about the causes of the American Revolution. You can follow along using your study guide sections on Unit 1, Section 1 and Unit 1, Section 2. A quick reminder about how PlayPosit works. In order to earn a grade, you have to finish the whole video. PlayPosit will not award partial credit, so you have to watch all the way until the last second of the video. We're going to begin with the do now. Your paragraph is popping up on the sidebar. Make sure you type your answers exactly as you see them in the word bank. PlayPosit will mark spelling errors as wrong. All right, and let's review. It says, the earliest settlers in America were Native Americans. They existed in America for thousands of years and created advanced societies. Their way of life was disrupted when the British began settling on the east coast of North America. These settlements became known as the 13 American colonies, and they would eventually become the United States of America. These colonies were divided into three major groups: the New England colonies, the Middle colonies, and the Southern colonies. The New England colonists were pulled to the region seeking religious freedom, but they did not allow people to practice other religions in their colony. The Middle colonists were known for being tolerant of other religions and ways of life, including to the natives. The Southern colonies had a climate that was conducive to farming on large plantations, and they used the labor of enslaved people to grow their crops. All right, your historian hustle questions are going to pop up on your sidebar. Make sure you get that spelling correct so you can get full credit. All right, and let's jump into our notes. Today we're going to describe the events and tensions leading up to the American Revolution. So let's just kind of start with where we are. We're here in New Orleans, hopefully. England is all the way across the Atlantic Ocean over here, and their 13 American colonies were over here. Early on, the American colonists really loved being part of Great Britain. They considered themselves British citizens just kind of from afar. But we're going to learn today how the French and Indian War changes that. So, in American colonies' early days, Great Britain and America had a very friendly relationship. This changes after the French and Indian War, though. The French and Indian War was very costly for Great Britain. They lost a lot of lives and a lot of money. So, in order to pay off some of their war debts, they decided to pass some laws that angered colonists. So here we see this was the landscape before the French and Indian War, where France still owned a lot of land in America. And after the French and Indian War, it's just Britain and just Spain. The Proclamation of 1763 was the first offense coming out of that French and Indian War. It prevented American colonists from settling past the Appalachian Mountains. The British issued this proclamation to prevent financing additional fights between the natives who lived on this land and the colonists who were looking to move into their land. So Great Britain is thinking, let's just make a line and tell our colonists, you got to stay inside of this line, and this will help stop fighting between natives and the colonists, which will save Great Britain money. The colonists are kind of rightfully angry, though, because they feel like they fought in a war and they deserve this land by the Ohio River Valley. All right, you have a check for understanding question. It says, after the French and Indian War, the British government issued the blank, which prohibited colonists from traveling west of the Appalachian Mountains. Check your study guide for spelling if you're not sure how to spell it. The British government issued the Proclamation of 1763. And here it is again, that line that tells the colonists that they can't cross it, and it made the colonists angry. So the next thing that happened was the idea of taxation without representation, because remember, Great Britain's trying to make that money back. So it's all downhill from here. The Sugar and Stamp Acts, which you can see the stamps for those right here, really angered colonists because it required taxes to be paid on some of the British goods. The Quartering Act was another thing that really angered the colonists because it required the British troops to be quartered or housed in American colonists' home. So now colonists are being told that they have to let the British soldiers stay with them and even feed them. The relationship between the American colonists and Great Britain got even worse once Great Britain began blank colonists without representation in Parliament. Once Great Britain began taxing the colonists. The colonists were particularly angry that they had no voice in the British government body known as Parliament that passed these laws. So they began to cry, no taxation without representation. Don't tax us unless you let us send some people to this government to make decisions with them. And here's an example of some people protesting the taxation without representation. They did not support it. The colonists protested through a variety of methods. They boycotted goods, they made speeches against the British, they used propaganda techniques such as calling the Boston Massacre a massacre, and demonstrations like the Boston Tea Party. When a person refuses to buy from a business in order to hurt them economically, this is called a what? It's a boycott. So if you're ever upset with the actions of a business, just don't buy from their business so that they're earning less money and feeling pressure to make changes. So here's an example or a drawing of what the Boston Tea Party looked like. This is an example of a demonstration. They're taking the tea that belongs to Great Britain and dumping it in the harbor in order to protest that tea act. So tensions continue to build until the American colonists eventually write the Declaration of Independence. And they do this at the Second Continental Congress. The American Revolution breaks out soon after this. And remember, we've got the Americans fighting for their freedom, and Great Britain is trying to fight to keep their colony as part of their country. All right, and now we're going to jump into some practice. This paragraph is popping up on your sidebar. Remember to get your spelling correct. And let's review. Great Britain sent its citizens to colonies in the 13 American colonies. For much of its time owning these colonies, Great Britain had a positive relationship with the American colonists. This all changed after the French and Indian War. During this war, American colonists fought and died to fight for the British, and the British spent a lot of money to pay for the war. To get this money back, the British began taxing the American colonists. This angered the colonists not because they didn't want to pay money, but because they did not have representation in the British government when making the decision to tax. Instead of giving the colonists greater representation, the British began taxing more and passed the Quartering Act, which required colonists to house British soldiers. Tensions erupted when 5 people died in the Boston Massacre. Since only 5 people died, it should not have been considered a massacre, but the Sons of Liberty labeled it that way as a propaganda technique to drum up support for the Patriots' cause. Tensions soon bubbled over with the Boston Tea Party, where patriots dumped British tea in the harbor to protest tea taxes. This soon led to the writing of the Declaration of Independence. You have 3 short answer questions popping up on your screen. Type in your answers and your teacher will grade this for you. If you get stuck, use your brain first, but then check Unit 1, Sections 1 and 2 to help you answer. All right, and now you have 3 multiple choice questions that are popping up on your screen. Same as before, try to use your brain first, but check your study guide to check your answers before hitting submit. Number 1 says, which statement best explains why Europeans began migrating to the Americas in large numbers during the 1700s? The correct answer is C. The New World provided social and economic opportunities for people who were struggling in Europe. So people were coming to the New World because there were more opportunities in America. Number 2 says, which statement best completes this diagram? So we're seeing the economic impact of the Sugar and Stamp Act. The correct answer here is D. The colonists had to pay more money in taxes on some British goods. So when you tax something, it means that you're making the consumers, the people who buy stuff, pay more money. Number 3, why was the proclamation of 1763 a source of conflict between the American colonists and Great Britain? The correct answer here is A. The colonists were upset that Great Britain was preventing the colonists from moving into the Ohio River Valley. So remember, Britain issues this proclamation to prevent fighting between the colonists and the natives, but the colonists feel like they are entitled to that land, and so now they're fighting with Great Britain. All right, 2 more questions popping up on your screen. Number 4, what's a valid conclusion that can be drawn from the quote above from the Stamp Act Congress? The Stamp Act Congress said that only colonist elective representatives should have the power to levy taxes. And number 5, one major consequence of the French and Indian War was that B, the expense of fighting the war led Britain to tax the colonists directly for the first time. So because of the expense of the French and Indian War, they taxed the colonists. A quick wrap up of our key points. The French and Indian War hurt the colonists' relationship with Great Britain because it leads to the proclamation of 1763 and taxation without representation. Both of these are major causes of the American Revolution. And number 2, the colonists protested using a variety of different ways, including boycotts, demonstrations, and propaganda.